Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you to the Beck Center, Ariel, Elle, and Chanel, and to everyone working on Rules as Code. I'm Joe Ditre. I'm a principal health policy analyst at the MITRE Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization. My colleague is Frank Ruscil, who is a principal software engineer here at MITRE, and we'd like to present work that the comprehensive careers and supports for households team at MITRE accomplished. MITRE developed C-CASH in response to the economic impacts of COVID. We were especially concerned for lower income, unemployed and underemployed households who didn't know where to get help, and if there were safety net programs for which they may be eligible. Early versions of C-CASH focused on developing a limited set of rules for a few federal programs. Again, our early and initial effort was on economic security and equity. We began with a direct-to-consumer approach to help individuals understand important benefits such as food security, housing, health coverage, childcare, unemployment insurance, as well as employment opportunities for which they may be eligible. We identified some differentiators, such as providing a view of a core package of federal benefit programs incorporating career services and opportunities, and to preview how career decisions could impact benefit eligibility. We learned during our first year of work that the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank's Advancing Careers for Low-Income Families initiative had created the policy rules database and the cost of living database, which you just saw a preview for by Seth Hartig over there at the National Center for Children in Policy. So we just want to say, in poverty. So we just want to say thank you to David Altig and Brittany Birkin and Alex Reuter and Elias Illen and Ellen Terry, who all worked on developing the PRD. We connected with the Atlanta Fed team and secured a memorandum of understanding and a non-disclosure agreement to work with the PRD as well as the CLD. MITRE wrapped the PRD into a web service to help scale and extend its availability and usability, and developed a Windows desktop application called the C-CASH Analytic Tool, or CAT, to exercise the PRD web services and to populate the C-CASH data warehouse. In a minute, Frank will demo the CAT, which allows users to create varying households and compare results across states and counties. CAT, like many of the tools you've seen today, pre-screens for potential eligibility. Presently, MITRE's C-CASH team is working to create a national data hub and analytics tools to understand how eligible populations are accessing benefits to better inform evidence-based policy making. As a starting point, our use case takes U.S. Census Bureau SIP data, that's the Survey of Income and Program Participation data. That's a large publicly available data set that includes self-reporting on federal benefits that households can access. The CAT allowed us to push the SIP data through the Atlanta Fed's PRD and run what-if scenarios. Now I'm going to turn it over to Frank because he's going to provide you more information about C-CASH as well as MITRE's work.
Thanks, Joe. So the chart you're looking at here is kind of our big picture. We thought that taking this work and making it into a bigger benefits analytic framework would really help drive informed policy making. So Joe touched upon the SIP data. Our first column would be any of the data inputs that would kind of be pushed into the data analytics engine through the CAT. Eligibility be calculated with the PRD and then stored in the data warehouse. The advantage of having it in this format is we can open the door to a number of other users like federal and state policymakers, program administrators, or other MITRE projects that are interested in not only the PRD eligibility results, but the census data. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to demo the tool that Joe referred to. Okay. So hopefully everybody could see my screen. And again, just a reminder, at the back end of this application is the PRD. So what we did is we actually wrapped it in a web service. We used a third-party tool to expose those PRD calculations. But that didn't really do us any good unless we could push stuff to it. So what we built is a UI that you could kind of pick and choose the parameters required to do the PRD calculations. Those parameters include, state, which we prompt the user to say, you could pick a state, you could do one or more counties. And then there's a number of different programs the PRD calculates. For now, we just left this disabled because we didn't really want the users to play around with too many programs. We just left all the ones that PRD supported at the time checked. And the next thing the person would have to do is actually build a household. So to do that, I just created a sample demo household. But within the household, again, parameters of the PRD are the household size, the age of each person within the household, their income, any healthcare they receive, whether they rent or not. You can see all these different parameters are here. So once you have this household in place, you can actually run it through the PRD. So what it does is it actually takes that household and that county in the state, sends it back to our web service, and you get results for that particular household. Now, if you wanted to do like a what if scenario, and again, I'm not a policy analyst, so I'm a software engineer, so I'm not really sure all the ins and outs of it, but you could actually take a completely different state and a different county and run that same household through it. And you can see that the previous results on the second tab are there. And you kind of do a side-by-side comparison of the particular family size. You can see that there are different states and counties. And then at the very end is where the values of, where you could have potential eligibility. And you can see here's SNAP, here's school meals, Section 8, so on, and Medicaid child. So that kind of gives you the values. So we thought that this was great, and people really liked it because they could create their own households. But as Joe alluded to, we wanted to get a more realistic indication of the population. So that's where we did a census import, and we were able to do over 8,000 households and run it through their different states to kind of do a higher level analysis of and what ifs. And just to show you kind of on the back end, this is a SQL Server database, and I cleared it before we started, but you can see on the back end, we're actually capturing all of that information in a database that could be exposed to a data warehouse. So I think in the time that I'm allotted, that's pretty much C-CASH. Back to you, Joe.
Okay, thanks, Frank. So he just showed basically what you see here is sort of what we had just demoed in real life, and so I'm just going to go right to. I think we're finished, and we're ready for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Frank and Joe, for that demonstration. As you so aptly put it, it is question and answer time. So go ahead and raise your hands, and I will field some questions to our MITRE team. In the meantime, I had a question for you, which is that you mentioned running really large data sets through this tool. Can you speak a little bit more about that? What kinds of large data sets, why you use certain kinds of data sets, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'll take a first crack, and then Frank can jump in. In order to do some analysis to basically compare various households, again, we use the U.S. Census Bureau Survey of Income and Program Participation data set from 2020. And in that data set, if you're familiar with that, it's like, tens of thousands of households all across the United States. And it includes households who are eligible for Medicaid, TANF, WIC, child care subsidies, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, we could run that data through the Atlanta Fed's PRD using the CAT. and then basically look at the results to see what the PRD provided in terms of eligibility or potential eligibility, I should say, with real families, real households who had been determined eligible or not for those programs. So that is where we started. There are other data sets that are publicly available, and there's, of course, proprietary data sets that can be run through the CAT. Frank, did you want to add anything to that?
No, unless you want to dig deeper into the technical part of it.
I mean, you're certainly welcome to.
Yeah, so we basically took that SIP data and we ran an ETL process, and we transformed it into a predefined JSON format that our web service API was able to handle. So from the CAT tool, we were able to pull that from the database where we did the ETL from, transform it into JSON format, and then post the results. And then you would see the results kind of same way you would see on the results tab of the quick demo I did with the two simple households.
Got it. Thank you for that. Daniel, would you like to come off mute and answer your question? I just saw your post in the chat.
Yeah, sure. I'm just curious, one of the promises of rules as code is that there are potentially these rules databases out there that are shared. Could you ever see using some other organization's rules database or what, and accessing that via API? Or are there limitations that would keep you from doing that?
No, I think the idea behind the platform screen that we showed is we wanted to be able to expand the data inputs to other engines if possible, and that would just really help the what if scenario. So the idea of a data warehouse is having multiple dimensions. So for each engine, we could have separate dimensions for our household. So extensibility was definitely high on our list of priority as far as our analytic platform.
Great. Thank you again for demonstrating all of the amazing stuff that this tool can do. Can you talk a little bit more about what are some of the limitations of this tool? And also, what direction do you see this going in? What are the possibilities with the CAT tool?
Joe, do you want to take that? Do you want me to take it?
Yeah, why don't you take it, Frank?
So right now, what we saw the CAT tool was great for like a single person being able to kind of do a quick analysis, and we were able to kind of bring in the census data. But I think for really to really take advantage of some of the PRD results, as we had mentioned, moving it to more of a web-based application that could be used across what we call sponsors or different users. And then, as it was kind of alluded to, having different data sets where you could even do deeper dives into, really understanding, this gap in policies and rules. And again, just develop a more informed policy-making workflow. I think it could definitely help in all those aspects. But I think from an application perspective, moving it to web-based and then just supporting, the PRD as it expands. Those would be two of the places that could be improved.
Yeah, and I would add to that, El, we're thinking that when we've run these data sets through, and in particular, just again, back to the SIP data, the Survey of Income and Program Participation data, our thought was, let's start looking at, the commonalities among households who are eligible for, using the SIP data and people who are participating in programs. When we run it against through the CAT, and we see that sometimes, like some of these households that have been determined not eligible for benefits, actually, when you run it through the PRD, indicates that they should be eligible. It gives you that ability to start, saying, well, why is a household with the same composition, the same household income, the same assets, why were they found eligible for SNAP, CHIP, and and TANF, but not these other benefits that this other household was? So we're looking for those commonalities and gaps, And that's why we're doing sort of taking the data analytics focus, and moved away from the direct to consumer. We wanted to, get experience with data analytics using the tool.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what, based on your research so far, what are some of the preliminary answers to that questions? Do you think a lot of the gaps just come in from the tech and from the difficulty of actually coding these rules? Or does it come from the complexity of the policies themselves?
So that's a great question. And I don't know if I could answer with the work that we've done so far. We really are just on the sort of initial stages of running these data sets through. But I can say that, and this is something that from the very beginning of this program, when Mike and Alex were presenting from, 10X and 18F, I mean, just when you looked at when they shared their screen and showed, just all the issues around coming to net income. I mean, it's phenomenally, difficult, right? It's because there are so many complex aspects to it. And there are nuances to the rules as to, what income gets counted and what is like who's in the household and who's not in the household and, on and on. And so, yes, the rules are quite complex. And I would say that, we're getting to a point where when I see all the work that's been done here, and it's just phenomenal, cutting through that noise and getting to distill the essence and come up with code that can basically at least provide, just like, the M-Relief folks showed, the Benefit Data Trust folks showed, who are or may be eligible and to assist caseworkers to make those decisions, better decision making. I think we're on the path. It's going to take a while, but we're on the path.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for being candid about the kinds of challenges that you guys face working in this space. We talk a lot, at least amongst the Beck team and internally, about sort of holding that tension between, on the one hand, wanting to make sure that our rules are coded as well as they can be so that these eligibility screeners are as accurate as they are, while also hoping to advocate for better rules, less complex rules, rules that make it easier for people to access these benefits. Where do you see your tool, sort of fitting into that space? How do you make it more flexible for those policy changes that we hope to see and that kind of stuff?
And I'll just start, Frank, and maybe you can add to it. But I think that as we've run the data sets through the tool and get a better glimpse at, these commonalities and gaps in households, that will inform or help to inform policymakers. I mean, the goal here is, why should there be these discrepancies? It's just like I think the second presenter showed that somebody was determined to only be eligible for $90 of food stamps when in fact the household was eligible for $600, which is a tremendous story. And we'd like to sort of take that at a high level to, start looking at these commonalities and gaps to begin to say, why is this happening? And how can you, federal or state legislator, change that outcome so that more people are more consistently determined eligible or ineligible, as the case may be. Frank, do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, again, we also wanted to have, kind of do a deeper dive on the rules on the back end and to be able to put levers on certain parameters that you could kind of adjust and see, like people that are eligible today. Well, what if we, certain parameters for a certain program that you could adjust, how many people would that then catch or how many people would fall off? And so to be able to kind of, do sort of like a sliding scale on both sides of it, whether it's income and household makeup or the actual policy rules parameters themselves, I think that could shed some light on impact of changes.
And the other thing that I would add to that, El, is just because of I think that the policy rule database that the Atlanta Fed created is a tremendous tool, and it provides values. Like, in other words, it indicates what the value of the benefit the predicted value of the benefit should be, or the estimated value. But think about that as a policy, like in a policymaker, if you wanted to know all the people in your county, if they were actually determined eligible for a certain program, what would it cost? Well, you could start to do that analysis using, building on the Atlanta PRD and, in the work of the National Center for Children in Poverty.